So we're finishing this week something that we've been in for several weeks, and it's really just kind of an exposition of what we have in our documents that's called Mosaic DNA. It's kind of the I guess the underpinnings of really what we are and who we are, and if I can put it this way, what we as a group of people should expect to experience when we encounter God in this particular place. And so the way that we've shorthand said this, right, is that this, and we are a house of breakthrough, that specifically we don't just believe that God is here to be appeased, and we don't just believe that God is here to be, how do I put this, worshipped in such a way that we're just doing things at Him, if that makes sense. That He's got this set of things that He likes, and that we're coming in to do things at Him that He likes. Like He likes church, and so we go to church, or He likes songs, so we sing songs. But rather, God has created, He's created this pathway and this enabling and this place of relationship to human beings, where human beings themselves are transformed out of kind of bondage and oppression and being people that we don't necessarily want to be, watching things come out of us that we don't want to see come out of us, watching patterns of behavior that hurt our lives and don't heal our lives. We can find ourselves in many cases, in many places, especially when we're sort of young and growing up, that we want to be something, but we can't quite be that thing that we long to be, and we long internally for some sort of greatness or some sort of meaning. We long for something that is really, it really is a meaningful thing. And then we find ourselves just in a mundane, broken thing. And the invitation of the Lord to us is not just to engage in a religion that is accurate, but rather to engage in a relationship that's transformative. And so the way that we talk about that, and the way that we express that in a shorthand form, is that we, and this is a house of breakthrough, that there should be a stepping up through the course of our lives on top of the things that have held us down previously. I want to read something for you that captures this. But the specific thing that we've lingered on for a few weeks that I want us to grab, and a bit I'm going to speak from my heart today, because a lot of times when I start preparing notes, I get lost in the notes and saying things that I liked on Friday, as opposed to we're coming to the end of this, and I want you to really feel from me and hear from me what I think is a real priority for us. And if we can grab this priority and we can live from this priority, then a lot of other things fall in line. And if we don't grab this priority and live from this priority, then there's a lot of things that we try to force and muster. And we try to muster strength and we force things to happen, as opposed to things happening in an appropriate way. And so if I can say it this way, we are a house of breakthrough, and we want to be people that experience the blessing of God in our lives, but are also extensions of the blessing of God in our lives. And like I've said before, that is not like a trite statement because we like an easy life. Rather, that is the reality that Genesis 12 is a promise from God to a man named Abram, from which the entire Bible all springs out of. And it's a promise that if that man would follow him, that he would bless that man, and then all the families of the earth would be blessed through that man. Even Jesus is an extension of that man Abraham. Even Jesus is a fulfillment of the promise made to Abraham in Genesis 12. Genesis 12 is where God comes to humanity and says, I am set on fixing the problems of humanity. I'm set on it. I am going to do it. I'm going to create a nation through which I bless and from which blessing will flow out of. That nation failed to walk with their God Yahweh. And so Jesus comes along to embody what that nation was supposed to be and do, and that nation is Israel. That Jesus comes along to embody what that nation was always supposed to be and do. And then as He does that, He opens the door to relationship to the Creator God Yahweh, to the Creator God. He opens the door for relationship, and transformative relationship opens the door to everybody on the earth, regardless of what nation they're from. Right? It's just kind of a shorthand of the Bible. And so when we say that there's a house of blessing, it's not like a trite thing where like, we want to be blessed and we want you to be blessed too. No, it's the reality that God created the earth to function in a certain way. And when the earth functions in the way that it ought to function, that's what He calls the blessing of God. And when it's not functioning the way that it's supposed to function, that's the curse of God. And it's not just God hurts a thing because it's not going the right way. It's that the material world in its fundamental nature is a good thing. And when humans operate in the material world in the way that they're supposed to, that is the blessing of God. And when human beings don't operate in the physical world in the way that they're supposed to, it feels like a curse. Things don't go the way that they're supposed to go. And it hurts. And so when we say house of blessing, that's what's underneath that. But the reality is there is no breakthrough, there is no blessing, there is no holiness, there is no life, there is no goodness, there is no accuracy, there's no truth, there is no real touch of God on anything on this planet outside of one priority, and that priority is the seeking and the pursuit and the practice of God's presence in our own personal lives and our lives corporately. And this is one of those things that gets forgotten really fast. And this is one of those things that gets pushed out of the way really fast. So you guys tell me something real quick. How many of you feel, and you don't have to raise your hand, but if you want to, you can. How many of you feel like your life is really just going from one problem to the next problem to the next problem to the next problem? That you're essentially solving one problem, and the minute that you know that feeling where you're like, man, we're going to make it through spring break. We're going to make it through spring break. And then it's just going to be like, then the next 3 months until summer are just going to be this, I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to work out every single day. I'm going to have my quiet time at 5:30 like I'm supposed to. I'm going to have the kids' lunches made. Like we're not going to be buying kolaches on the way to dropping him off at school and stuffing him in his lunchbox so he's eating like a 4-hour-old kolache while he's, you know what I mean? Like, that it's going to be managed. It's going to be managed really well. But life can very quickly become solving a problem that monopolizes our time, it monopolizes our emotional life, it monopolizes our thoughts, and then we can kind of solve that problem, or we can fix that problem, we can get it put at bay, and then the minute we get it solved, we're moving along to the next problem. We're moving along to the next anxiety of the heart. We're moving along to that next thing that if we don't solve it, it can kind of ruin or erode or get in the way of what we desire our life to be. Do you know what I'm saying? I want to read something for you in Psalm 84. Just this is a place I wanted to come from today. I don't often preach from the Psalms. Most of my time with the Lord is lived in the Psalms, and I seldom preach from it, but this is one that I kind of want us to jump into today. It's Psalm 84, and if you want to turn there in your Bible, that would be wonderful. If you don't, it'll be on the screen. So if you do have your Bible open, there's a little tag at the top of this one that says it's a psalm of the sons of Korah. And I'll get to this in a minute, but King David, he instituted worship to Yahweh in a systematic way in the life of Israel, and he was the first person to do that. And I want to talk more about it in a minute, but this is a song written by one of the people that he brought in to systematize worship. And specifically, and we're talking thousands of years ago, he systematized, so he made it to where there was night and day worship to Yahweh in his presence, and that had never existed in Israel before. And I want you to understand the heart of it. And in a little bit today, we're going to talk about worship a little bit. But I want you to understand the heart of David. But I also want you to witness that his heart gets reflected throughout the Scriptures. And that's why God would say of David that he was a man after his own heart. David was not perfect. David did wicked things, a lot of wicked things. But there was something about him that God looked at him and said, that honestly is a man who is after my own heart. So Psalm 84. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, faints, for the courts of the Lord, the courts of Yahweh. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she can lay her young at your altars, O Lord of hosts. It's a weird way of saying it, but what's being said there is not just humans, but all creatures long to be in the presence of God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house, ever singing your praise. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart, this is the place we're going to land on for a minute, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. And as they go through the valley of Baca, so that's just that would have made sense to you, 3,500 years ago. That's a place that's like a wilderness. It's a dry desert. It's a valley that is not lush and fertile. As they go through a valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs, and the early rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength, and each one appears before God in Zion. Let's go back to verse 5 and want to read it again. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, and in whose heart are the highways to Zion. So follow me here real quick. I think many of us, and this is the pattern that most of us get locked into. We go from one anxiety of the heart, solving an issue that is making us anxious, just to go from one anxiety of the heart to the next anxiety of the heart, to the next anxiety of the heart, to the next anxiety of the heart. We don't go, as this text says, this is the invitation that for the people of God, is that we might go from strength to strength. Do you see what I'm saying? Instead, I think many of us go from we go from anxiety to anxiety. Or we go from fear to fear. Or we go from this thing I've got to do to this next thing I've got to do to this next thing I've got to do. And the invitation, however, is not that. The invitation is that we go from a place of strength internally. And when I say a place of strength internally, follow me here. What's the next line say, right? As they go through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. So there is a type of person, there's a type of people who internally are not governed by a set of circumstances that they find themselves in. Rather, they go into dry and desolate and difficult circumstances, and they bring refreshment to a circumstance instead of trying to manipulate circumstances or create circumstances that are all the right way and the way that they're supposed to be, and then live inside a happy place. Because if they find themselves in a difficult place, it is not that they are like, I'm strong in this difficult place and I'm going to make it through. It's like, I've got to get out of this difficult circumstance because I can't survive any longer inside of this difficult circumstance. Does that make sense? So we've been conditioned specifically through, a lot of it's just through commercials. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of it's through commercials, that the goal of our lives is to go from a circumstance of comfort to another circumstance of comfort to another circumstance of comfort. That's the way that we're trying to govern our lives and figure out our lives in such a way that we can control or manipulate our circumstances so that they're not difficult, so that we are not in a difficult place, and so that we can skirt all of the difficulties that we're going to find ourselves in and get around them. And the reality is that the invitation for human beings that really want to walk with God is that you are walking a straight line from difficult circumstance to difficult circumstance because you've been put on the earth to bring refreshment and to bring life and to bring goodness into difficult circumstances. Because you have a relationship to the Creator that is the avenue of that thing. That there is a willingness and a desire inside the heart of those that really, really have a relationship with Yahweh where they find confidence in it, that they can step into difficult circumstances and they can bring goodness into a difficult circumstance, as opposed to what we've been conditioned to most of our lives is, how do I find all the comfortable circumstances and then jump into those? So how do I get a job that gives me, I get out of college, how do I pick the right degree, make it in 4 years, and it not be too difficult, that I don't have to make a lot of sacrifices, so that I can get a job that gives me $120,000 right out the the gate, and it also makes me feel like I'm a contributing member to society, and I go to work, and it makes me super happy inside, and I get paid a ton of money to do it so that I can take my 4 vacations a year, and that I can retire when I'm 45, and I can go on several vacations a year after that, and all my kids like me, and I'm respected at work, and I do the right thing, and when I do the right thing, everybody slaps me on the back, and they're like, man, you did the right thing, you're awesome. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, we want that sort of life. I want that sort of life. Like, it'd be awesome. Please don't raise your hand because I don't want hatred in the room, like deep bitterness. I don't want a root of bitterness. But how many of you has that been your life? Where there's always more than enough. Where there's always enough time to do what you need to do. Where there's no desperation. How many of you that your life is you do the right thing and everybody's super happy with you that you did the right thing? Or maybe it's more often that you do the right thing and there's 50 opinions about what you did. I mean, just have kids. Right? But the reality is that the invitation to God's people is to go from a situation where there's not quite enough. And you live in that situation with fortitude, with strength, with a growth in management, a growth in self-control, without giving up, without lashing out, without responding in anger to the people around you. That you live in a difficult situation, and it's not just that you survive it and made it through, but you live in a difficult situation, and you are actually a refreshing presence. Whew. You are actually a refreshing presence. Like, I'm not trying to rake any of you over the coals here, but consider, are you a refreshing presence? Are you a refreshing presence? Are you the people that they're like, oh God, do you know what I'm saying? The invitation for God's people is that you're going from one circumstance to the next circumstance to the next circumstance. And you are going inside of that circumstance from a degree of strength to another degree of strength, to another degree of strength, so that you can provide to the other human beings that are also in that same difficult circumstance refreshment. That's the invitation to God's people. So does this psalm make sense to you? Blessed are those. So then the question is where does that strength come from? Yeah. Blessed are those whose strength is in you. Now, when your strength is in Him, you go from strength to strength, right? You go from circumstance to circumstance. But your fixation in the circumstance is not just fixing the circumstance so that it's comfortable in that circumstance. Your fixation in that circumstance is a growth in the Lord, an ability, and follow me here, an ability to access His presence inside that circumstance. An ability to access His presence inside of that circumstance. Can you guys remember certain circumstances in your life where you were mastered by them? You were not master of them. They were master of you. I have about 7.5 minutes with a screaming 4-year-old, okay? It's like, after 7.5 minutes, I'm going to be honest with you. After 7.5 minutes, I'm mastered, okay? And I'm telling you, for the first 7.5 minutes, though, it's like people should film me. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they're like, "Dadgum, that guy he's a parent. He needs to write a book on parenting." Like, look at the way that he's responding to that ridiculous outcry. Like, this is an unfair situation. He's being screamed at. And I legit got 7.5 minutes, right? And I'm like, you cannot have chocolate milk right now. You cannot have warm chocolate milk right now. You've not eaten anything today. Warm chocolate milk is at bedtime. I'm sorry, you can throw a fit if you want, but you're not getting warm chocolate milk right now. Warm chocolate milk will be later. It'll be before bedtime. You can kick me, if you can throw a fit if you want, but and I'm a cool, collected guy. And then at 7.5 minutes, I snap. Like, and I'm done. And it's not that I can see it coming. I don't feel it coming. I'm like, Terrell, you're doing a great job here. This kid's going to repent in a minute. Publicly, he is. But something happens at 7.5 minutes. And I am no longer master of me. I'm being mastered by something else. I don't have the ability, in a lot of these cases, to be able to access the presence of God. Because what did we talk about last week, right? We talked about the reality that God has moved from a temple/tabernacle. He's moved from a house. He's moved from existing in a place as he did with the Israelites. That in Jesus, not only did Jesus open the door for you to be a follower of Israel's God, Yahweh, not only did he do that, not only did he forgive your sins, but primarily what he did is God was actively moving from living inside of a temple to making his home inside the human heart because he wanted to be there. He wants proximity. Whenever Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and they were removed from the Garden of Eden, he wasn't mad at them, he was sad at them. He was grieved in his heart because he had created humans for a relationship that the only way we know what that is the relationship that you have with your own children or a child has with you. The way that you want to be around your child, the way that you love your child, the way that when they're not acting a fool and they finally go to sleep and then you're looking at them and you're like, oh my God, I just love you. Like there is a desire in the heart of God for that sort of relationship, and that thing was taken from him by our actions. And there is a sadness and a grieving in his own heart because of it. And so he actively began to move in human history so that he could restore that gap, to restore proximity, to restore closeness, to restore presence, to restore nearness. So it's not just a theological thing that he was after. You're forgiven, now go about not cussing and all that. What he was after was, no, I'm actively moving from residing in a temple where you've got to cross the country to come and visit my presence. I'm moving from there to your own heart. So that you can have access to him and that you can access his presence, you can access his nearness. There can be a real moment of interaction. There can be a real moment of strengthening. There can be a real moment where you are internally affected even while you're 6.5 minutes into this crying spell and you know you've only got 1 more minute left. Do you know what I mean? Where there can be a moment of interaction where there is a strength from him, where his perspective over that child washes across your mind and your heart. And so now you are treating that child, or you're treating your employer, you're treating your employee, or you're treating your spouse. When you feel like you've gotten into an argument with your spouse and your spouse is not hearing you and you are doing everything that you can to try to communicate well and be a reasonable person, and you're not getting reasonableness on the other side, and then you're like starting to lose it a little bit, and you know that thing that happens, right? None of you know what I'm talking about. Who am I talking to? But God was moving from that temple to your own heart so there can be a moment where it does not have to be, I'm mustering self-control from myself, or I'm forcing something, that there could be a moment where you're absolutely here right now. You absolutely know what this feels like. You absolutely know what it feels like to be treated in a way that you shouldn't be treated. You absolutely know what rejection feels like. You absolutely know what it looks like to raise a child that doesn't understand what's going on and is going to reject you in the end, right? Like this is God's relationship to Israel. He absolutely knows what it's like to go through every human thing that we've gone through. And he has so much wisdom, and he has so much love, and he has so much reality to bring to bear in the moments, so that you're living in that moment from a place of strength, not from a place of lack, and not from a place of anxiety, and not from a place of about to lose it, but you're living in it from a place of strength, so that you can go from that difficult situation. Because, right, I don't have a 15-year-old, but some of you have had 15-year-olds. And you're like, bro, I would trade you for those 7.5 minutes of crying over chocolate milk. I'll trade you right now with what I'm going through with my 15-year-old, or what I'm going through with my 25-year-old, or what I'm going through with my grown child. I'll trade you right now for that crying over the milk thing again. Like, give me the crying over, like, who are you? But the reality is wherever you are, there has to be a growth from, I know how to access the presence of God in this moment because I'm going to be stepping into a more difficult moment. And I know how to access the presence of God there. I need to know how to access the presence of God when I'm getting passed over for a raise. I need to know how to access the presence of God when the ends are not meeting, and I am praying for a financial breakthrough, and I am praying for things to get to come together, but it's not happening right now. How do I access the presence of God and I live in a place of strength? And the way that this text is going to talk about that is this. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, and their strength is in God, because in their own hearts are the pathways to Zion. Zion is this shorthand version that the Bible is going to talk about the place where God lives, right? That's why it doesn't say Jerusalem there. That's why it says Zion. Because in the mind of Jewish people, there is this future kingdom, there is this future place where God dwells on the earth fully and completely, and they call that Zion as well. But what they're saying is, for those people that want to live that lifestyle, there is the highways to Zion in their own heart. They know how to access the presence of God moment by moment by moment. And if we don't pick up that practice, we are going to simply be a group of people that talk about God's willingness to have breakthrough but seldom see it. They're going to talk about God's willingness to be people of blessing and extend blessing to other people, to actually be people that affect the city that they live in and affect the people that they work with and affect the people that they go to school with. Not just try to reason them into the rightness of the scriptures, right? When we talk about affecting people with God, we oftentimes can watch YouTube videos of people that argue well, and then we want to go and find some people that are not Christians and argue them into something, right? And we're like, heck yeah, that guy argues super great. He made them feel stupid. Can't wait to show someone that they're stupid for not believing in Jesus. Do you know what I'm saying? The reality is that is not what brings people to worship of Yahweh. What brings people to the worship of Yahweh is human beings that can step into a difficult circumstance where everybody's losing their head, and they are a person of refreshment because of the strength that they find in the Lord. And as they find that strength in the Lord, they are a person of refreshment in a difficult environment. That is the primary way that attracts people to Yahweh, and that makes Yahweh look as if he is actually a being that cares about other human beings. And so, blessed are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. And as they go through difficult places, they make it a place of springs. They make it a place of refreshment. So, here's the story that I want to show you. Like we talked about last week, you can see in that story in Genesis that when Adam and Eve do what they do and they're removed from the garden, that there is a loss in the heart of God. And I want you to hear from me in this really specifically right now. It is really, really easy for me to talk about the presence of God and talk about strength in him, and all of it revolves around the effect that it has on your own personal life. Okay? So it's easy to say we should worship God and there should be the presence of God and we know how to access his presence, but all of it is so impersonal. All of it is so it's so focused on your life giving you what you want your life to give you. Does that make sense? It's so focused on having a good relationship with my kids, or having a good relationship to the workplace, or having a good relationship to whatever difficult thing I'm in. But it's not actually about God himself, right? It's about fixing the circumstance. Does that make sense? That it becomes such an impersonal interaction. It becomes such an impersonal thing. And something that's just been heavy on me the last couple weeks is, and you heard me talk about that he is an actual person. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, God is an actual person whose heart was hurt. His emotions were affected when he lost access that he had wanted from the human beings that he created. And then it affected him. And that even when we talk about presence, or we talk about like make time for him, or we talk about like give him some time, we can say like it's good to read the Bible, so read the Bible, or it's good to have a quiet time, so have a quiet time, or it's good to do those things. And we talk about it as like they're an essentially good thing, or it's a thing that's going to benefit your life, or a thing that's going to give you breakthrough, or a thing that's going to give you blessing. And the reality is that's it's just so impersonal. It's so impersonal towards a being who was deeply grieved at the way that things went early on in humanity, and who has been actively moving in history, and actively willing to bring about sacrifice in his own life, and actively willing to become a human and suffer pain for the reclaiming of a relationship. And the reality is when we talk about presence, and when I talk about it, I want us to understand that there is first a sweetness to it. There is first a personal sweetness to it that is about just you and another being, not a feeling you get from that being, not a feeling that you get from a song that you like, not a feeling that you get from a text that you like. It's still something different than that. Do you know what I'm saying? There's so much of me that wants to grab all the stuff that we've done in Christianity for the last 2,000 years, like all of the ritual and all the formulas and the way that preaching is done and the way that worship is done and the way that everything is done, like the way that we do everything, because the minute that we like a thing, we like codify that thing and we make it a ritual that God likes, as opposed to like just a human to divine being relationship that we're actually engaging in because of the reality that he just simply enjoys it. That he simply enjoys it. That's the thing that I don't want us to lose, and that's the thing that I'm trying to like. And I think God likes worship. I do. I've never been a divine being. But I think there is something that's really like honoring to him. There's like a respectful thing and an honoring thing. Yes, there's obviously an honoring thing when we honor him with our choices, like for sure. And then we honor him with our bodies. And we honor him with our words, for sure. But I want you to see in 1 Chronicles that this man, King David, he is told by a prophet that he's going to be the king of Israel when he's young, when he's very young, in his teens. And he doesn't actually become a king for several years later. So he's told that he's going to be a king. He's anointed as king, and yet another man sits on the throne, and that man's name is Saul, and that man is going increasingly wicked. And as David gets into relationship with that man, King Saul gets so jealous of him that he tries to kill him. So after being told by the prophet that he was going to be king, David spends a lot of his life running in caves and hiding, and not just fighting against Saul's enemy, the Philistines, but also hiding from Saul, not killing him when he has the chance, not taking the throne from him, but hiding from him, trying to respect him, trying to honor him, and spending year after year after year after year after year not living in what God promised him he would live in, but running for his life in many cases. And then there are these key moments where God himself deals with Saul. There are these key moments where God himself protects David. And then there's this key moment where David is actually brought up and he's anointed king of Israel. And all of those problems that he was trying to run from, all those problems that he was trying to deal with and deal with in the right way, they come to an end. And he becomes king. And I just honestly want to read to you the first thing that he does. And there'll be some things that I skip here a little bit because it gets you get lost in it a little bit. So David built houses for himself in the city of David. And he prepared a place for the ark of God, and he pitched a tent for it. And then David said that no one but the Levites are able to carry the ark of God, for the Lord had chosen them to carry the ark of the Lord and to minister to him forever. And David assembled all Israel at Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord to its place, which he had prepared for it. And David gathered together the sons of Aaron, the Levites, the sons of Kohath, Uriel, the chief, with 120 of his brothers, the sons of Merari, Asaiah, the chief, with 220 of his brothers, the sons of Gershom, Joel, the chief, with 130 of his brothers, the sons of Elizaphan, Shemaiah, the chief, with 200 of his brothers, sons of Hebron, Eliel, with chief, with 80 of his brothers, the sons of Uzziel, Aminadab, the chief, with 112 of his brothers. And then David summoned the priests, Zadok and Abiathar, the Levites, Uriel, Asaiah, Joel, Shemaiah, Eliel, and Aminadab. And he said to them, "You're the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites. Consecrate yourselves and your brothers so that you may bring up the ark of the Lord, the God of Israel, to the place that I have prepared for it." So he commands all these people to go and get the ark. So keep in mind, the ark of the Lord at that time, this is the place where God's presence is. God's presence is not in his heart. God's presence is in that ark. And so he now has everything settled. And the first thing that's on his mind is he's going to go and get the presence of God, and he's going to bring it from where it was, and he's going to bring it back to where he lives. And he pitches a tent for it. But then what he does is he grabs all of these people, hundreds of people, and he institutes day and night worship for them to write songs, to sing songs, and to play instruments around the presence of God. And what it says over and over in this text, right after this, is that their job is to minister to Yahweh. Their job is to minister to God. Why on earth does God need ministry? He's not homeless. Why on earth does God need ministry? His marriage isn't failing. Why on earth does God need ministry? His life isn't falling apart. Why on earth does God need ministry? Why is it that we view ministry as a thing that you do to a hurting person instead of a respect and an honor that you give to everyone, even God? Do you follow what I'm saying here? I just don't want us to lose this as we talk in a particular way. I don't want us to lose that when we come in here, that half the time there may be songs up here that you don't like and you don't know. And what happens real fast is that we just get disconnected because the thing didn't entertain us. Or we get disconnected because the sermon didn't entertain us. I don't want to get caught in a loop where I think my job is to entertain. You don't want me caught in that loop. I don't want the band, I don't want Jordan caught in a loop where when we're searching on Monday and Tuesday, what are we going to do? That the underlying hope is that our people are entertained. And that we're gauging, how did you like it? How did you like it? How did you like it? Did you like it? Did you like it? Did you? Do we want to do engaging things? Yes. Do I want Sunday morning to be a valuable part of your week? Yes, for sure. But there is a reality that when we gather here, but before we even jump in our own personal lives, when we gather here, we are actively trying to slow down. We're trying to slow it down. Because your life, I know it, your life is one problem to the next problem to the next problem. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying your life is one problem to the next problem because we're human beings and our lives are difficult. And if we really are awake and engaged, we are going to find ourselves growing in responsibility, growing and stepping into difficult situations, growing into stepping into difficult areas, growing into places of responsibility. We're supposed to be having that. We're supposed to be growing in responsibility for most of our lives. We're supposed to be growing and having our hands on difficult problems. We're supposed to be growing inside of difficult situations. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so I actively am trying to create a place here where we can slow down, but it's not slowing down for the sake of being entertained by music. It's slowing down for the sake of you are here, you're here, and you're here. And whether I know the words or don't know the words, whether I get where this guy is going or I don't get where this guy is going, there's a real desire and a real reality that I know how to interact with, and I know how to recognize the movements of the Spirit of God upon my own heart in particular situations so that I'm actually growing in relationship and I'm not just grabbing on to a set of rituals that looks like they're working for other people, but deep inside I know that there's not like a reality to this relationship. Do you follow what I'm saying? And we can talk about presence all we want. We can talk about doing worship in whatever way we want. We can talk about things in whatever way we want to talk about them. But the reality, it's like I'm trying to grab us around the tangible. That David was a man who recognized that he wanted the presence of God near to him and that he had a responsibility towards God himself that was a worshipful presence towards him, not just an accessing of his presence for the benefit of his own life. Does that make sense? Do you follow me there? That we have a responsibility as human beings. We have a responsibility as human beings towards a worshipful presence towards him. That really, I'm not saying put all the problems at bay. I'm not saying that. But there's a fundamental responsibility on our lives as God's people. And that's a worshipful, honoring, acknowledgement of his reality in here while we sing songs, in here while we read the text, but at home while babies are crying, at home while you're looking at your bank accounts, at work while you're getting treated in a way that you don't want to get treated. Do you follow what I'm saying? That it's not just I'm moving it to fix the problem, God. It's like I'm moving in because I know you're present. I know you're present. I know there's wisdom. I know I have access to all those things. But primarily, God, is I want to do this thing with you. I want to do it with you. And I want to return back to doing it with you as opposed to just using you to fix me or using you to fix my problems or using you to be entertained by or using you to be right about things or using you in some way. I think God is big enough and he's not emotionally delicate. I'm not saying that at all. But it's respectful of us. I want to be grown children. Does that make sense? There's just a way I hate getting treated by my own kids sometimes. And then I look at myself and I'm like, why am I treating God the exact same way that I don't want to be treated? Do you follow what I'm saying here? I want to be a grown child in the presence of my Father. And the reality is it does. It takes practice. It takes practice. But the practice that I really am asking of us right now, is not just the practice of acknowledging that he's present. It's the practice of giving our presence to him in a respectful, honorable way, with the recognition that he is not simply there to fix all of our problems, even though he longs to do that. That he's not simply there to give us patience in a moment, even though he longs to do that. That he's not simply there to do those things. But that there are many times that the practice of presence is, you're here, and I'm here towards you because you're just worthy of it. You're just worth it. Like you've done so much already. You've done so much already. Yes, do I need some help financially? Yes, and it gets hard. And sometimes I feel hopeless at night, for sure. And I don't quite know what to do with this stage of raising kids. And I feel hopeless at night sometimes. And I desperately need you to move. God, like, that doesn't change, right? Like, that doesn't change. There's empty seats in the pews, God, and I want a church to I want a church to matter, and I want it to be full. It would just make me feel great if there was more people at the church. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just being honest with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, but my job's not to circle this room and try to get the pews filled, or even like have greater ambitions than that, and like see people come to know Jesus, or their marriage is healed, or whatever these great things I think the Lord will do through his people. But there is a reality that we got to draw back for a minute, and we got to do it regularly. We got to do it regularly, where the practicing of his presence is for him. This is so hard to talk about. That's the ministry to him, is that we're giving him what he wants. And how weird is it that he wants you? How weird is that? How weird is that? It's weird. We're giving him what he wants. And I think he does. He wants to be with you. He lost something that he wants back. Like, you are also the pearl of great price. You are the lost coin that he tears apart the house to find. And that, like that, there's an emotional reality that has to be a part of that approach. I don't know how to talk about it. There's an emotional reality that's got to be a part of that approach. That's like you lost something. And in Jesus, you were getting it back. And yet still in Jesus, I can spend 99% of my time solving my own problems, fretting over all the issues, trying to fix it all, like doing all the stuff, even going to church, even preaching and even singing and all. I can do it still, like just not with him, you know? And there's no like 3 keys to this, right? It's just you. It's you and a recognition in the moments of your day of whether there is like God, I want to do this with you because I think you enjoy it. I'm here. Whether you speak or don't speak. I'm here whether you solve or don't solve. I'm here whether you give or don't give. I'm going to beat this horse into the ground. So I want us to worship for a minute. And just so you know, I said this last week. We got into a real habit for a while. We got into a real habit of like clock watching. I don't want to disrespect our time, your time, but also that thing doesn't govern anything. It just can't. Like, I don't want to be wasteful I don't want the band to be wasteful. I don't want us to start 20 minutes late because we're not prepared for sure. But there's got to be some slowness here. Our lives are so fast. Our lives are so fast. And so I want to give him just presence. I want us to be present before him. And we're not worried about whether we like the song or not. We're not worried about what time it is. We're not worried about whether we're entertained by the sermon. We're just not, do you follow what I'm saying here? That it's just us and him before him. That if that doesn't begin to be even more and more so the culture of the way that we gather, that we are present towards him in that way, and that it's worth it, like it's okay, it's worth it. And then occasionally, once every 6 months, I'll let us out here at 11:45. God will be like, bless them and let them go. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he'll do that, I swear. But we just have got to step into this place in such a way that we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Because that is the place that we can step out of and actually be effective and actually be stable and actually see transformation and actually see the things that we talk about. We can actually see the life of the Bible lived out in our own lives, but it's got to be from there first. It's got to be from there first. So if you guys will stand, I do want to worship. I'm going to pray for a second before we do. So God, I just personally feel towards you, and I think many of us in the room do, and I think that's just the beautiful thing. I'm so grateful for that. I think many of us in the room feel a way towards you, that we're ready and we're excited and we're willing to live a life with you that really is with you. And that we're grateful that you are the type of Father that you are. We are grateful for that. And we're grateful that you're not the type of Father that you can sometimes be talked about like you are. Like, we're grateful that you're not angry and that you're not impatient and you're not frustrated. And we're grateful that you're not that. And we're grateful that you care and that you have real power to affect our lives. We're grateful for that, and we don't want to discount that. But we're just saying now to you, Lord, that you don't value gold and you don't value so many of the things that we value. You don't value notoriety. You don't value likes. But at some level, you really do value time well spent. And we want to give you some time well spent. And that we want to do that as a congregation, as a group of people who recognize the value of us being mentally and emotionally present when we gather, and mentally and emotionally able to be present regardless of where we are, for your sake, as a ministry to you, as a way of loving you, as a way of loving you. And that forgive us that we're kind of absentee children sometimes. Thank you for being forgiving. But we're here towards you now. We are here towards you now. Many of us have been here towards you the whole time, but we're here towards you.